Now, it's been said that not all heroes wear capes. Some are trauma therapists. But what I say is that not all heroes wear capes. Some are trauma survivors. I happen to be both, and today I'm going to share with all of you my story. Now imagine I'm 21 years old, 5 months pregnant, a junior in college, and my big sister, my second mom, was sentenced to 11 years in prison for manslaughter. I was devastated. She left behind me, her 3 children, ages 4, 7, and 8, and my mother. I remember the first time I visited her in prison. It was family day. We laughed, we joked, we hugged, we kissed, we cracked jokes on each other. It felt like old times until I heard the clank of that door behind my sister when she walked away from me. I went home that night and cried myself to sleep. And my heart was so broken that it would have been 9 years before I could bring myself to visit my sister again in prison. Now, did I immediately seek therapy? Oh, no. There was too much to do. I had to give birth to my daughter, go back to college and finish my degree in journalism, come home, start my career, and help my mom take care of my niece and nephews. But truthfully, I should have gotten into therapy because I was struggling. I was sad, I was depressed, I was angry, I was irritable. I saw danger everywhere. I constantly worried about the safety of myself and my family. I kept gaining weight year after year after year and couldn't understand why. I withdrew from the people I cared about and cared about me. And I struggled with focusing. My sleep was terrible, and when I did sleep, I would either have dreams or nightmares about my sister. But eventually, when I was 26 and my father died, and a year later my grandmother died of cancer, I knew that my heart would not sustain one more loss. So I found a therapist, and I actually liked him. He was cool. He brought me in, asked me about all of my symptoms, diagnosed me with depression, sent me to my primary care doctor to get on an antidepressant, and for the next 3 months, I saw him once a week. I would come in, he'd quickly ask me how everything was going, and then sit me in front of a TV and have me watch videos on how to manage depression. Not one time did he ask me, Stephanie, how are you handling all of these losses? And the truth is, it wasn't just about the loss of the people I loved. It was the loss of my freedom, the loss of my identity, my sense of safety in the world. What I know now that I didn't know then is that I wasn't just depressed. I was traumatized. Now, what is trauma? It's essentially an emotionally distressing event. It could be one event, like the loss of my sister. We call that acute trauma. Or it could be a series of events, like the loss of my sister, father, grandmother. We call that complex trauma. Now, how would you know if you had experienced trauma? If you've watched 2 people that you care about beat up on each other, you've experienced trauma. If you've watched somebody you love struggle with drug and alcohol addiction, or you've struggled with it yourself, you've experienced trauma. If you've experienced physical abuse or sexual abuse or emotional abuse, if you're still sad as an adult about your parents' divorce when you were a kid, you've experienced trauma. If you experienced racism and microaggressions in the workplace, if you've ever been bullied, you've experienced trauma. If you ever got in a car accident and it was so bad that to this day you don't want to drive, you've experienced trauma. But trauma could also look like you didn't get enough hugs and kisses as a kid. Or maybe you were criticized more than praised. Maybe when you made a mistake, the adults in your life yelled at you or called you names. Maybe you were bullied. But let me tell you what trauma is not. It is not what you say it is for me or what I say it is for you. Because there's a range to trauma, and what devastates me may not devastate you. Now, as trauma-focused therapists, we use something called subjective units of distress. And that's a fancy way of saying something really bad happened to me, and it impacts me to this day. And we'll ask our clients to make a list of those type of events and rate them on a scale of 0 to 10. So I'm going to share a story with you guys that I share with my clients all the time. When I was in the 5th grade, this little boy called me Big Bird. Now, I can't tell y'all his name. I can't tell y'all what he looked like, but I remember that he called me Big Bird. Now, did him calling me Big Bird stop me from graduating from high school and college, earning my master's degree, opening my own private practice? Absolutely not. But did that little boy calling me Big Bird stop me from wearing yellow? Listen, y'all better believe it. To this day, I hate wearing the color yellow. And it's okay, you can laugh. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I would rate that about a 1. But the loss of my sister, my father, my grandmother, trying to figure out how to be a parent to my daughter while I'm parenting my niece and nephews, I would consider all of those a 10. Now, how would you know if you need a regular therapist or a trauma-focused therapist? The best way I can help you make a distinction is a regular therapist is going to ask what's wrong with you, but a trauma-focused therapist is going to ask what happened to you. So let me tell you about some questions you can ask if you're looking for a trauma-focused therapist. One, you want to ask them, are you certified or do you specialize in trauma-focused treatment? Can you explain to me how my brain, central nervous system, and body is impacted by trauma? And can you explain it like I'm a 10-year-old? Are you going to teach me skills that are going to help me take care of myself in session and outside of session, like grounding exercises, and talk to me about safety and mindfulness and self-care? Because I'm going to be honest with all of you. Doing trauma-focused work is difficult. And a good trauma-focused therapist is going to want to make sure that you're in a good place in session and outside of session. Lastly, you want to make sure that they can help you write your trauma narrative, help you process, reprocess, and eventually to retell your trauma story. For me, that's the most powerful part of trauma-focused treatment because it helps you move from being a victim to a survivor. And not just surviving, but thriving, living, building confidence and resilience. Now, I'm sure all of you are wondering, Stephanie, did you finally find a trauma-focused therapist of your own? I did, and I have to tell you, it changed my life. It made me a better mother, a better therapist, a better mental health advocate, and a clinical director. It also gave me the strength and courage to finally put on my cape. So I'm going to give you some things to consider as you move on. If you've ever experienced trauma and you have not found therapy or gotten into therapy, please find a trauma-focused therapist. If you know someone who's been through trauma, and either they've never been in therapy before, or maybe they are in therapy and they're struggling or they feel stuck, tell them to consider finding a trauma-focused therapist. And to all my African-American mental health professionals, please consider becoming a trauma-focused therapist. There are a lot of people in this world like me, and we need you. Lastly, when you finally find the trauma-focused treatment that you need and deserve, don't be afraid to put on your cape. But also know it's okay if you need to take it off sometimes. Thank you.